I'm just going to assume that we're starting to become live, and I'll just kind of say hi and introduce myself and see how you guys are doing. We are here in the middle of a nice Friday afternoon in the middle of summer, and Steph is in her backyard, which looks so beautiful out there. And we want to talk about a topic that's pretty serious, and it's a topic that combines our both passions. I've been real passionate about plant-based ketogenic diets lately, and the impacts I've seen, not the impact, the influence, the benefits I've seen with that. Steph's real concerned about the effects of that on the microbiome. So I'm going to try to see if I can find this on my Facebook page so I can see the questions as they come in.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome. The more interaction we can have them.
Yeah, so I can do that. But I want to introduce you guys to Steph. A lot of you in my community already know Steph, you know, the gut whisperer, the probiotic guru, and she does all kinds of really cool stuff with gut health. And a lot of you are in her program, her, what do you call it? Your community program. Sorry, I'm looking down because I'm trying to get this. I want to make sure I can see it there. And I want to see who's there. Where are we? There we are. Yeah. Okay. Give me a second while I turn down the volume. I haven't figured out how to master this whole thing with it. All right. So there, I can see it. There's Janine. Yay. And Diana. Yay. Okay. So we got some folks watching. Hip, hip, hooray. So we're here to talk about really basically protecting your microbiome from the negative impacts that a ketogenic or very low carbohydrate diet can actually have. So Steph she's one of our nutritional endocrinology practitioner certification candidates. She'll have her certification quite soon, I understand, in the middle of finishing up her qualifications. She's a brilliant practitioner. She works a lot with gut health, and she has programs, various programs for both practitioners and the lay people on gut health. And she has a membership where she teaches people how to actually incorporate delicious probiotic containing foods so you don't have to spend your life savings buying them like I do. So I need to start actually going and making my own. But in the meantime, I buy Cocoa at the grocery store.
I have more time than money.
Yeah, sometimes I have more money than time. Actually, I'd like a little bit more of both, but you know how that goes. Anyway, I'm excited to have her here because she actually approached me. We have an upcoming conference coming in at the end of September for health practitioners. It's called SHINE, Scientific and Holistic Investigation of Nutritional Endocrinology. And this particular one is nutritional endocrinology for metabolic disorders. And we're going to be looking at the role of keto and fasting and intermittent fasting on helping people to restore balance to those underlying metabolic disorders that lead to heart disease, cancer, autoimmune, and brain and memory loss. You know, the little things, right? Those little diseases that are a nuisance disease, not. Yeah. And she reached out to me and she said, you know, you talk a lot about keto, but I'm concerned about the effects of keto on a microbiome unless we take some specific precautions. And as those of you who've listened to me before know, I'm not a big fan of the typical bacon and butter approach to keto. That what I teach is more plant-based approach to keto, and that you can get the benefits of fasting and intermittent fasting and keto in terms of the way it balances blood sugar and balances brain chemistry and all that, and still have the benefits of a plant-based diet with all the antioxidants. But Steph's concern is either way that we do have to take some precautions to protect the microbiome. So she's here today. We don't have very long today. We just squeezed this in on a busy Friday afternoon, but she will be available for the whole weekend at SHINE, and she's going to do a full-blown presentation, and there's time for Q&A. But I want her to give us some practical strategies today that we can walk away with that will say, oh, I like this keto thing, and oh, maybe it is messing with my gut, and here's what I could do about that. So take it away, Steph, and let's hear from you.
Great. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me here on Facebook and for just talking about this a little bit openly. I feel like every time something starts to gain popular momentum like this, I end up having this unpopular view that I'm afraid to talk about. And it's just really nice that you're so open and that we can try to just have like this meeting and discuss strategies for how to, because nothing is either 100% good or 100% evil.
Right.
And I find that the more that we walk into a diet trap of like this exact diet religion is going to work for me. And the more we have our blinders on, and the more risk that we assume.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few of the things that can happen when we're basically increasing our protein and fat intake and decreasing our complex carbs is that proteins will break down in the gut, which can lead to damage of the mucilaginous lining of the gut. It can lead to increased alcohols being produced. It can lead to, it feeds like what I would call the less friendly bacteria. Some people call them the pathogenic species. So it feeds the clostridium, feeds parasites, it feeds the E. coli bacteria, and it selectively does not feed those other bacteria that we need more of, like the bifidobacteria and the other short chain fatty acid producing bacteria that help us to heal the gut lining. And so we're talking about, belly fat, and what's underlying the belly fat might be the spiking of blood sugar, but what's underlying the spiking of blood sugar might be metabolic conditions that the microbiome has a role in. And so just by avoiding spiking our blood sugar, we're going to see some great improvements. We're going to lose weight. We're going to have mental clarity, but it's almost like not opening the mail and not finding out that you have like a hydro bill, or that's what we call it. Right? It's like not opening up your credit card statements, and eventually they're going to just, cancel it, or I don't know,
come after you, take your kids. Yeah.
Right? So they're going to turn off your electricity. Meanwhile, you're not feeling any of the symptoms, but you could actually be contributing to the underlying reasons why there are metabolic disorders by feeding bacteria that make it difficult for us to sleep, feeding bacteria that lead to insulin resistance. Because there are bacteria that will alter our biochemistry to push us into insulin resistance because that works better for them. So we could be feeding these bacteria with an increased protein and fat intake, and not feeding the bacteria that are fed by the complex carbs, which are the ones that are going to help us to get more sleep, help us to reduce our weight, help us to pack on less fat. So I think it's important to both feed those bacteria that are going to help us with our metabolic conditions, as well as avoiding spiking our blood sugar, which I think we can do both at the same time.
I love that we can do both at the same time, right?
Well, because yeah.
Yeah, because some folks have said, like, okay, so you need to eat lentils, or you need to eat quinoa, or you need to eat bread because it has these short chain.
There's no one food that you need to eat. Like, let's just get out of that. Like, you don't need to eat meat. You don't need to eat bread. You don't need to eat potatoes. Like, there's no. Anytime someone says you need to eat this one thing, I'm
a little cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because I know for me, because of some of my gut stuff, and I have some genetic tendencies, that FUT2 gene, and I don't make enough bifido food for the bifido and all, that I should be eating lentils. And I'm like, lentils give me gas. Why do I want to eat them? Right. I'm not going to eat bread because it has gluten, and even non-gluten bread, those things spike my blood sugar. So but I still want to feed the good guys, and I want to maintain a healthy microbiome. So let's talk about how we can do both.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I would like to talk just for a minute about the different carbohydrates. So like what we're all avoiding in this kind of, we want to get off of the blood sugar roller coaster, essentially. What we're all avoiding is those short carbohydrates, glucose, galactose, lactose, fructose even. We want to avoid those guys because exactly. As soon as they're in our small intestine, they're absorbed and they spike our sugar. And then we've got those medium chain carbohydrates that some of us, we each digest differently. We all have different amounts of those brush border enzymes that break those down. So this is a bit of a trial and error area. But so there's those medium chain carbohydrates, which all foods have, and you may know them as FODMAPs. They're everywhere. So that's not a thing. It's just how much can we tolerate in a specific meal. Then we have those long chain carbohydrates and fibers, like insoluble fiber, which your gut bacteria are not going to digest. It also includes inulin and fructooligosaccharides, which you might find in like burdock and in seaweeds and aloe and things like that.
Jicama.
jicama.
I love jicama.
Yeah, so these things. And then it also includes resistant starches. There are a couple different types of resistant starches. One of them is basically just like a really protected long chain that just goes through your small intestine because it just takes that long to break down. So we all have different motility, but for almost all of us, our motility is such that even if it's very slow in the small intestine, separate from the large intestine, these carbohydrates are going to get through there intact and not going to get broken up by bacteria. So they're going to make it all the way to the large intestine where they are then broken down.
Okay, so before you talk, because a lot of people are talking resistant starches, that potatoes are high glycemic if you eat them hot, and if you put them in the refrigerator, something changes and they contain resistant starch and they may not raise your blood sugar anymore. So I just want everybody to be on the same page with what exactly does that mean to be a resistant starch, and why does making something cold after cooking it turn it into resistant starch?
Okay, so let me think. So there are a few different categories of resistant starch. There are those resistant starches that you're going to find in plantain flour and green bananas. Those ones that are already resistant starches.
Naturally occurring.
You don't have to heat them up. In fact, once you heat them up, the resistant starch content is actually destroyed. So,
so baked plantains are not good, but raw plantains would be.
Exactly. So if you're going to use plantain flour, don't make gluten-free bread. Put it in your whatever coconut wraps that you're making and use those, or red pepper or whatever you're doing. Use those raw. Put it in your dehydrator. Yeah, interesting. Raw crackers. Yeah, because once you cook it, those actually,
okay, so it's the opposite for the green banana and the plantains versus potatoes, which are said,
so there are
and
those
rice and
like white rice and potatoes, which the more times you heat them up and cool them down and heat them up, so you heat them up, you cool them down, it creates a resistant starch. It's basically a protected long chain starch. Once you cook them again, it doesn't destroy them. You cool it down again, and there's going to be even more. So you could like cook potatoes 8 times and thereby increase the resistant starch every single time. If I'm ever going to eat potatoes, I basically cook them, cool them down, and then make them into yogurt. So I know that the bacteria that I'm adding are breaking down. Like bacteria just want to eat glucose. So they're going to eat all the easy sugars first. They're going to eat all the long chain sugars last. So if I'm cooking the potato and cooling it down and then fermenting it, I'm sort of cleaning up.
Okay, so this has got to sound weird to people. Potato yogurt, right? So, I eat coconut yogurt and cashew yogurt.
Normal people. Any normal people out there?
There probably are, because people share these things, right? And so, I know, but potato yogurt is like, wow, that's out there.
I started, so I had a yogurt company. We made a yogurt out of almonds.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking at ways to reduce the impact of my consumption. Also the cost, honestly. But like the ethics of what I purchase are important to me. And I don't believe that almonds are the worst thing you could buy. But I do believe I can grow potatoes in my backyard. And I do believe that in the poorest parts of the world and, any kind of subsistence lifestyle, we can grow some.
Easy to get, right? Yeah, potato famine, right?
Well, potato famine was when we took all the potatoes away and they had nothing left to eat. But other than that.
I'm just confused. Don't mind me.
But we can grow them and they're cheap. So, and they're white. And I also want something white that's going to, feed the normal people in my life. But so I've discovered that a cooked and cooled potato, when blended, with some water or milk, coconut milk, something maybe you want to, increase the fat content or change the flavor a little bit. Even just water works though. You can make a pretty nice yogurt. You can make a cheesecake out of this yogurt. You can make a dip, a dressing. Like, it's really good.
You've got to go check out her, what is it called? Friendly Flora Collective. If you're not already in her Friendly Flora Collective, this is where you learn how to do all these things.
But yeah, so this was also in part as a reaction to people saying that they're taking tablespoons of potato starch to help with their gut bacteria. And I'm like, there has got to be another way. I don't want to eat powdered. That's not food. I just want to eat food. And I wouldn't typically eat potatoes, but this is just one kind of hack that I have developed to work around this.
Very cool.
Because of the cooking and cooling thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've got established what these carbohydrates, the short chains, the medium chains, the long chains, what the heck does this have to do with keto, and how do we get around this?
Mm-hmm. So as we're increasing the fat and protein in our diet, we're quite often decreasing the carbohydrates.
Well, that's the whole point of keto, right? It's to get a very low.
Exactly.
Right. 5% of your diet is down to carbohydrate, which we have to talk about that because it's network.
I feel like the word carbohydrate is a very, like, why are we using this word to describe like these completely different particles? It doesn't make any sense to me. We're avoiding the ones that are spiking our blood sugar.
Right.
So we can include foods like broccoli and burdock and lentils. So if you Google inulin, or if you Google resistant starch, you're going to come up with a list of stuff. If you're anything like me, you're going to be like, oh, I don't eat that. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. Lentils, maybe. And I don't eat it. I don't eat that. So you look at the lentils and you be like, huh. The thing is, half a cup of lentils has like 4 grams of resistant starch. And actually we're trying to get up to about 20 grams per day.
Ooh, 20 grams a day.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are we going to do it? Okay, let me tell you what my typical diet is, and you tell me how I'm going to put 20 grams of resistant starch in, right?
This is a fun game. I don't know if I can win. Okay.
I drink my green smoothie, which is loaded with greens and an avocado, usually, sometimes hemp seeds. I have my yogurt, which is either homemade or, when I'm lazy or don't get around to it, cocoa yo from the store. That's usually my first meal of the day. And today I had made the other day some little veggie burger patty things that were made with walnuts and hemp seeds and whatnot. And I had a half of one of those. So that's a typical breakfast for me. Maybe I'll throw in some olives. Maybe I'll have a salad. I mean, breakfast. It's really like a 2 p.m. breakfast. Yeah. So, and then for dinner, I'll have a huge salad with olives and pine nuts and walnuts and lots of different veggies, and maybe a tahini dressing. So that would be my typical day of eating.
So what I think we would have to do in this case is, like we're talking about some of these foods that are, I'm kind of thinking of them as supplements, as like inulin or resistant starch supplements. Like we're talking.
So how much is in like inulin? I have inulin. I love jicama. So jicama is one that contains inulin, right?
Right.
How much does jicama contain?
Like you can. That's a good. I didn't look up jicama because actually I'm kind of allergic to it. But you can use like, that's true. You can use inulin as a sweetener.
Yeah, I've used that.
And like, use that in your desserts instead of using.
Put it in your yogurt or whatever. Yeah.
Stevia. You can put it in your yogurt. It tastes sweet. It's white. It's kind of non-offensive. It doesn't have a weird aftertaste. That's a weird. I'm like thinking about these things as sort of as supplements. If there's a way to get to a place where you can have a cup of lentils, that's going to help. But again, it's only going to help.
Only 4 grams. Right.
But
what about green banana flour added to my smoothie? How much does that? I have to look it up to see.
I'll have to look that up too. Like if you're going to add 2 tablespoons to your smoothie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look that up. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah. And the same thing with the jicama. I'll look up jicama and see how much resistant starch. But you're saying a goal is 20 grams. So now I know that my goal is 20 grams.
But yeah, so all vegetables have these things. All vegetables have these things. They have like an assortment of fibers and the assortment of carbohydrates, right? And so it's also a quantity thing. Like when you're having a salad, you're having a gigantic salad, right? And a lot of the risks that are associated with like the protein excess, really what that is protein not being broken down in the stomach properly.
Okay, so low stomach acid, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
H. pylori.
Yeah, the risks of the protein excess where it feeds the clostridium and the E. coli and et cetera, what happens is it gets through and then it feeds them. So that juice you're having, for instance, is very high in protein. Green juice.
This is loaded with protein. This probably has 25 grams of protein.
How hard is that for you to digest?
Easy. Oh, it's so, I mean, it's so easy. And this yogurt has only 1 gram of protein. But two, because I eat the whole jar.
So it's important also to maximize our digestion of those foods we are eating, so that any of the byproducts that are going to be harmful to our gut and metabolic health aren't getting through there. They're getting broken down. The amino acids, like, I mean, we're creating histamine and amines and other things when they break down in alcohols, and so let's just minimize that, because that's going to have a negative effect on our glucose metabolism.
So we want to optimize the stomach, the breakdown of the amino acids, and optimize the duodenum digestion, where the pancreas secretes pancreatic enzymes and protease enzymes.
Okay. If we're going to eat things like lentils, I know this sounds, but in your kitchen, once you have a flow of stuff going, that's okay. You can sprout lentils. You pre-ferment them. You can soak them. Like, instead of soaking in water, I soak in water with a probiotic in it.
Oh.
To really reduce some of the anti-nutrients and like the gas produced when eating them. Soak the lentils with plantarum, water, boom. Sprout them. And then you can even ferment them from that point forward. You could make them into...
Blend them up then and make yogurt from it.
Whatever you want. Make them into like a cheese, make something out of the lentils. So you're really transforming, some of those negative effects that you would have from the lentils. So I think it's important to, instead of just saying like this food is bad, to say, how can I have this food and optimize the benefits of it?
Yeah.
For myself. So like, those are some hacks, like how I got around the potatoes, how I got around the lentils.
Right.
The majority of what I'm eating is honestly fresh green foods. And if I'm going to eat any root vegetables, I do it in a way that
you do the resistant starch trick. It works for sweet potatoes as well, or squash, or
it does. They're just not as high.
Okay, so they're not as high. Yeah. I noticed that glycemic index wise, sweet potatoes are actually lower glycemic than white potatoes, even though you would think that sweet potatoes taste sweeter, but they have less of an impact on blood sugar. And I can usually eat a little bit of sweet potato, no problem.
Yes, they just have different amounts of the different fibers.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's on. I'm having a hard time seeing who's on, but it looks like, let me see if I can hit this and if it shows me. Oh, there we go. Sandy's on. Hi, Sandy. And Venus. Hi, Venus. And there was a question from Diana. Let me just see what her question is.
I just wanted to say one other thing that I forgot to say.
Sure.
So if you know you're not feeding the bifidobacteria, and you know you don't have you have the FUT2 SNP or whatever, just supplement with them. I mean,
just supplement with them. And I do, well, because I eat a lot of yogurt, and when I make my own, I'll add a bunch to it. Would you suggest then, since I do have that SNP, like 8 of them homozygous, so which means that all of them are bad on me. Yeah, I have 8 of them homozygous.
Yeah. So, I mean, the bifido, your body, your mucosa is not going to be feeding them. And you're not feeding them a lot with your diet. And you know that they have a very positive effect on insulin resistance and other metabolic disorders, positive effect on sleep, which we could all use more of. So, yeah. I mean, hey.
All right. And so would it be helpful if I get my yogurt and I open it up and I stick some bifido in it, stir it around and then let it sit for a few days, or will it not grow in the refrigerator?
You can re-ferment it. The thing is, if it's a well-cultured yogurt, each bacteria kind of has their own protective mechanism to prevent other bacteria from growing. So if it's a well-cultured yogurt at a pH which is really safe to sell, those bacteria are going to be so established that
nothing else is gonna, they're gonna push them out.
Yeah, if you buy, what I want to say is a crummy yogurt, if you buy like, there are a lot of non-dairy yogurts that like taste like pudding.
Yeah, I don't like those.
Well, if you take those and you add bifidum to them, I'm pretty sure your bifidum is going to do really well.
It's going to grow. Okay. Because they haven't been fermented well. There's still some sugars in them for them to grow on, right?
Whatever's holding them still, the, pectin or whatever, that's all going to feed your bifidobacteria very well. If it's got
I think I'll just make my own. I'll just blend. It's
just
so easy to make yogurt.
Just make your own yogurt. I'll show you how. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, this is Steph Jackson, and she is the founder of what is it called? Friendly Flora Collective. If you just go look up Friendly Flora Collective, and she's got this monthly membership where she teaches you how to make all these unusual and usual too. I mean, she does too, fermented vegetables and sauerkraut too.
Normal people, yes, come.
But, you know, I see the people posting in her group, and they're posting these like beautiful parfaits and cheesecakes. And I saw Sandy on there, and I know Sandy's very active.
Is in the comments right now is a complete rock star. If I won the lottery, I would want her to come over to my house. She's very inspirational. She's great ideas.
Yeah. And Ingrid is the other one in there that posts these beautiful pictures. Oh my God. It's like, oh, so amazing. So Diana wants to know something a little bit more personal to her. What is the SNP again? FUT2, Diana, FUT2. FUT2, but FUT2 sounds like foot, FOOT, so it's FUT2. Diana has a gut issue where her stool test, if I'm remembering correctly, shows that she doesn't have lacto or bifido. She's got H. pylori not wanting to move over and make war with me whenever she introduces a little good probiotic. So if she starts to take some bifido, even she'll start with tiny amounts. It's okay. As soon as she gets up to anything more than tiny, war breaks loose in her gut. Really, really upsetting. So far, the only stuff I seem to be able to use is homemade, naturally fermented kimchi and sauerkraut. Just keep eating those in small quantities. Will I ever be able to introduce other good probiotics? And if so, when and how?
Well, the good news about the kimchi and sauerkraut is they're actually quite diverse in bacteria. So one of the main bacteria in there is Lactobacillus plantarum.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, that's not one of the first bacteria. It's not one of the, what I would call like the safest bacteria to introduce. If you're talking specifically about H. pylori, there are two lactobacillus bacteria, Lactobacillus salivarius and Lactobacillus rhamnosus, that have both been shown to reduce H. pylori populations. Basically in your gut, you want to have like up to 10% like the bifido and the bifidobacteria based group, and you want to have up to 2% lactobacillus. So a very small amount.
Very small amount.
We're doing it kind of like beep backwards here, but I would start with some of those specific lactobacillus that could help you to reduce the H. pylori population. But then just knowing that later, somehow working yourself up, working on your gut motility, taking ginger, I don't know, it's going to be different for every person. Get yourself to a place where you can tolerate those bacteria that are going to help the large intestine and small intestine environment be balanced. Because there's kind of no way around that. And everything is figure outable. There will be a way. It's just going to be your individual path. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope that's somewhat hopeful.
Yeah, I think it should be. I think, Diana, maybe it's not too late to switch, but Steph and Brandon are leading a group in ERC. And since we haven't, 100% firmed them up, I think it might not be a bad idea for you to get into that group. And that way, Steph can kind of be more closely aligned.
Like, boom, that would be awesome, because we have a year. The thing about this is that, and this is not, it doesn't sound like what you're doing, Linda. Diana, it sounds like you're being very, very careful.
Strategic, yeah.
But what I do hear people do is they just try a probiotic and then they go, oh, that doesn't work for me. And then they leave. No,
not her. She's gone back. Bless her. She's been so, and the reaction is so severe that, and sometimes it even causes bleeding. Like it's just ripping apart her gut lining and she's bleeding. So she's very, very careful about it. And very, very strategic.
Sometimes you have to go about changing the environment before you can add the bacteria. And so, yeah, these things just take time. It takes time, but it doesn't mean that it's a wrong path to go down.
Right. Cool. Yeah. So let us know if you want to do that, because I think it would be a good group for you to be in there, Diana. Anybody else? Roger, very helpful, she said. Cool. Anybody else have questions? Anything that we missed? Anything? Share a little bit about what you're going to be talking about at Shine so that people know.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the things that we talked about today just in more depth. We're going to talk about some of the risks that are associated with keto, because I think we might as well just talk about it, even plant-based keto, because then together we can find solutions, right? So we're going to talk about the risks. We're going to talk about the role of some of our gut bacteria in maintaining our metabolism. I like to call it homeodynamic, not homeostasis, right? So in maintaining our metabolism as we consume these different carbs. We're going to talk about some plants and herbs that are in my diet and maybe in yours too, and the different types of carbohydrates that are in them. So I have a little chart that I'm working on where it's basically like aloe, what's in aloe, seaweed, what's in kelp, what's in, and then we can go through, okay, well, so someone who's avoiding FODMAPs might want to avoid these ones, but hey, you can try this or whatever. And that way we can each sort of find something that we can start with. And then especially at Shine, if you're working with clients, you can maybe help them to personalize a way to,
which is really important, because we get cases like Diana and, you know, others like her who are struggling, and they're really doing a good job diet wise, but you know, they're still struggling. And I think it's really going to be helpful for the practitioners to learn this stuff.
And then, yeah, sometimes we are going to just supplement with certain probiotics. And in this kind of situation, I think it's prudent to do so. So we're going to talk about some of the probiotics that are available as supplements for yourself and for your clients, and what some of the benefits are to them. And yeah, what some of the, what I think would be like kind of smarter ways to take them if you're doing a keto diet for a time.
Good. Awesome. Well, thank you. How can people get into your thing? It's the way they get into it is it to
the Friendly Flora?
Friendly Flora Collective.
I'm going to
just put the link in there for Shine. She'll type it in, but I just put in the link for the Shine conference. Hopefully it comes up.
Awesome.
I think it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's September 27th to 29th. Steph's going to be talking on the 28th in the morning so far. That's the way the schedule looks like so far. So we highly recommend that you, oh, something screwy.
I think it's stephjackson.com/collective.
Oh, is that it? Okay. What if we just go and Google Friendly Flora Collective? Let's see what happens. Friendly.
Yeah, there you go. It's /collective.
Yeah, you have it. friendlyfloracollective.com.
Or yeah, so that's the program website, but then there's also,
oh, and then stephjackson.com. Yep.
For the information page, stephjackson.com/collective.
Collective. Got it. All right. So let me see if there's any more questions before we hit the road. I know we're both busy.
The best part about having this conference together and each of us being there together is that we can open up a conversation like this.
Yeah.
And it's something that isn't really being talked about very much. In these movements, we really just talk about like all the great benefits and oversimplify everything.
Yeah.
And it's great because we are all deep into this. We are all deep thinkers. We all dig deeply. And so having all of us together so we can really hash this out, talk about it over dinner,
right.
You know, in my workshop and then afterward, and then see what kind of collective solutions we can come up with.
Right.
And education as well for our clients. I think it's really important
Yeah.
that we all show up to events like this to shine.
I agree. And we have some great speakers in addition to Steph. We have Dr. Tom O'Brien. He's going to talk about brain health and autoimmunity. And we've got Mike Mutzel going to be talking about fasting and autophagy. And we've got Dr. Anna Kabeka going to be talking about the impact of diet on menopause and how we don't have to have a miserable time going through menopause. And we've got Tricia Nelson's going to talk about here's the thing, we're putting people on like somewhat restrictive diets, whether it be the elimination diet, an autoimmune paleo diet, or a keto diet, or a plant-based diet. And what does that do to people who have this tendency to be emotional eaters and have food disorders, eating disorders? And she's going to address that as well. Because we really do, before we just start throwing out a diet at somebody, really need to be paying attention to their psyche and their emotions around it as well. So I think that's, oh, and then Dr. Alan Hopkins, who's local, he's going to talk about some of the dig deep advanced testing. Plus, I'm going to talk to you all weekend long about lots and lots of stuff. Whatever they don't cover, I'm going to cover with relationship to metabolic disorders and all the good stuff. And we're also going to have a couple of people in on Sunday to really talk about how do you get your practice out there. So as a health practitioner, it's one thing to actually be out there doing stuff, but how do you get the people to know how good you are and how much you can help them? So you have two different speakers on there talking about the reach, like how do you get a following on LinkedIn, and how do you really get business on LinkedIn, and how do you use speaking and local speaking engagements and so much more. So I'm excited, and I'm so happy to have Steph joining us today.
It's going to be really
Yeah, it's going to be really great. All right. So thank you, everybody. If you have questions, type them in after this. If you're watching this as the replay, just type them in and tag us in there so that we know that you did that, and we'll come back and answer your questions, especially Steph, because she's brilliant. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.